Today we are going to weave a herringbone seat using 6mm wide binding cane. As you can see, this chair has been totally cleaned out. This is the seat that came out. You can see the herringbone pattern in that, and we're going to be duplicating that. If you look at it closely, you can see it goes over 3, under 3, and that's the same pattern we're going to use. I'm going to flip it over. You can see the bottom. They just did standard basket weave, which we're going to do that also. To start the chair, first thing you need to do is soak some cane in water, some wide binding cane, and you want to use the longest strands in your hank to start with because it makes the weaving go faster. So I'm going to take out a couple strands and we'll get started. Before we get started, you want to measure the distance between the back legs, and we have 10 3/4 inches. Measure the distance between the front legs. We have 14 1/4 inch. What you want to do is subtract the back measurement from the front measurement, and that comes out in this case to 3.5 inches. And then you want to divide that in half, which comes up to 1 3/4 inches, and put a pencil mark on each side. I've already put the mark there. And the same thing on this side, 1 3/4 inches. And now your measurement from pencil mark to pencil mark should be exactly the same as your back, 10 3/4 inches. Your chair will have different measurements, but what you want to do is have pencil marks on the front rail that are exactly equal with the distance in the back rail. To start your chair, the way I do it is I put my first strand underneath and I just clamp it temporarily right there. And I don't use any nails or any tacks in the wood for this entire process. What I'm going to do is loosely wrap it around the front, over around the back, just loosely at first. And I'm going to wrap the whole piece that I'm starting with. And you want to start with the longest piece that you can. It's a good place to use up your long pieces. Now I'm going to go back, now that the whole piece is in there, and tighten it up a little bit. I'm going to put this edge right on the edge of my pencil mark. And I'm going to pull it back here, and I'm not going to pull it tight. You do not want to pull it tight. Just leave a little slack in it. And I'm going to take each strand as I go, leaving it just a little bit loose, pushing each edge snug up against the other one. Until the whole piece has been drawn up tight. Now I can hold it back here with another clamp. Now this initial piece that we have clamped here is going to stay clamped until we start weaving. Once we start weaving, we're going to catch this piece up and it will be held in place by the weaving process. You'll see that later. Now we have room here for another strand to be added. So what I'm going to do is take my next strand and I want to lay it on top of that one. It doesn't have to go all the way back or anything. And I'm going to take a stapler, and it's kind of hard to line it up. Try that one again. Now that I have my stapler working, you'll see I put about 2 staples in, and I always do it from the bottom up so that the prongs are on the inside. And then what you want to do is take a pair of needle nose pliers and just squeeze each prong just a little bit to flatten it. And that makes your life a whole lot easier later on when you're weaving, because you can slide right over those with new pieces of wide binding cane. Otherwise they will catch on it. Now I'm going to take this piece and do the same exact thing as I did with the first one. And this is a nice long piece. And just loosely wrap the entire piece. And I won't continue much further. I'll just show you what you do. Is you just loosen that up, take the clamp off, and just tighten this up. But when I say tighten, I don't mean tight. Leave it a little bit loose on top. And just keep wrapping that piece until you've reached the end. I'm going to go ahead and continue wrapping the entire seat, and we'll come back when it's time for the weaving. Here you can see I'm about halfway done wrapping. I'm keeping the strands very close together along the front and back rail. I have my clamps holding my loose pieces. Some people ask, how long do you soak the cane for? I would say anywhere from 15 minutes to a half hour, a little bit longer maybe. You don't want to leave it in for hours and hours because it will discolor. You want it soaked long enough so it's pliable and flexible and doesn't break when you bend it. I've just added a new piece, and I wanted to show you the importance of laying the new piece on top. Always the new piece on top, the old piece on the bottom. And the reason for that is this end of the old piece, you want it on the bottom. Otherwise, as you're weaving on the bottom side later on and sliding pieces down, they will catch on that, and it'll give you a lot of problems. But if that's always on the bottom side, then you won't have that catching problem. And when it comes to this end, they'll just slide right over it. No problem at all. And that again is the reason for squeezing the staples down, so that the pieces that you're weaving in can slide very smoothly over them. Alright, we have the entire chair wrapped now. The back is full from edge to edge, nice and tight together, no gaps. Same along the front. You can see my pencil mark. So I'm going to take this last piece, bring it up over the front, right to my pencil mark. It's a little bit long, but I'm going to leave it like that for now. I'm going to clamp it up here because we're going to start weaving in the back, and we want it out of the way. And what I'll do with this piece is I'll cut it off just so it'll fit right in there. And that's going to be caught up in the weaving, and you'll see that soon. This side here I'm going to take the clamp off because that'll be in our way. I'm going to move the clamp up to the front. So now the two clamps are in the front and the loose pieces are just being held nice in place. Now we're going to start our weaving. You want to take a piece of wide binding cane and you want to look for the growth nodules and feel them with your finger, because you don't want to weave this way, the way this one is facing, because that will catch. It will always catch. So every time you add a strand on the weaving, you want to find out which way the growth nodes are and make sure you be pulling through so it'll slide over them, not slide into them and catch. So I'm going to start in the back left hand corner, and I'm going to go under the first strand and over the next three. And then I'm going to go under 3 and over 3 all the rest of the way across. Kind of plays tricks with your eyes, but after a while it kind of makes sense to you. Just continue under 3 and over 3. That's our pattern. 3 under, 3 over. And you notice I'm not weaving near the back. I'm weaving more towards the middle where it's easier to work. And then I'll just slide it back when I get there. Now that one is going to go over our loose one. Now you see I can pull it through very easily because our growth nodes are all facing the same way. I'm going to pull it through with just about enough to go underneath with this tail. I'm just going to slide it back to the back edge where I want it. And you can take a visual check, make sure it's 3, 3, 3. Sometimes you'll see where you got 4 or 2, and you'll have to pull it out and go back to that point and fix it. Now I'm going to flip the chair over and tuck this tail in, and I'm just going to go, I'm going to do 4, over 4, under 4, just for speed. You could do 3 or 6, whatever you want. The bottom's not critical. And even if you miss your pattern and you go under 5 once in a while, that's really not going to matter. So you're going to want to slide it back as far as you can, kind of pull it tight so it's tight coming around the rail. And now we're dealing with the other side, which we just finished weaving on the top, and we're going to bring that in, and it's going to follow the exact same pattern. So I'm just going to go over 5 there and 3, whatever, and slide it in the same exact, and it's pretty quick, as you can see. And I'll just push that back as far as I can, give it kind of a little snug there. Then I'm going to turn the chair back over. And now your next weave is going to be, your first one was under 1, this one's going to be under 2. So I go under 2, and then over 3, and under 3, over 3, under 3, all the way across. It's probably easier if you don't have a band-aid on your finger, but I don't have a choice today. And you have to pay close attention when you get to the strand that you're picking up on the weaving. Once you get a few strands in, it's going to catch this one and it'll be tight, and we can remove the clamp. Now you want to pull it tight, and then we want to push it back. I use a wooden wedge, it helps a lot. If you use your finger to do what I'm doing with the wedge, you'll have band-aids on like I do. But you just want to kind of push it back, get it in place. We're going to flip it over, and I'm going to continue the same pattern underneath. And it's eventually going to pick up that loose one there too. I don't think I have enough to go around again. No, I don't. So I'm going to cut it right there. Handy tool for cutting. I recommend these. I'm going to take another piece of cane, and we're going to find which way the growth nodes are, and they're that way. So I actually want to go in the opposite way here, because I'm going underneath, and when I go on top it'll be the right way. I'm going to follow the same pattern all the way across, and I'm going to lay it right on top of that one that I just did. Now I don't staple it. You can't pull real tight on it because it will pull right out, but if you don't pull too snug it will stay there, and as you weave more it'll tighten up real tight and you won't need any staples. If you have problems you could put a staple in, but I just prefer not to. Having a little trouble with my clamps coming loose as I flip it, but it's pretty easy to put them back in place. Now I'm going to weave across the top, and if I did the bottom correctly you'll see that these are tapered the right way, and I am going the correct way. Now I've gone under 1, I've gone under 2, now I'm going to go under 3 and over 3 all the way across. And I'm going to stop the video at this point because you understand what I'm doing now, and when I flip it back over I'll just pick up again what we do with our 4th strand. Okay, we're ready now to start weaving in the 4th step. I wanted to show you that your material is going to dry out on you, or you may even put it aside and pick it up again another day and it'll be totally dry. What you want to do is mist it. And I'm more than misting it, I call it really getting it wet, and soak it down. And when I flip it over I would do the same on the bottom, and that's going to help to keep it pliable and so that you've got some play in it. Now on the 4th one, just to reiterate, we went under the 1st strand, then we went under 2 strands, and then we went under 3. Now we're going to go over 1 and under 3. And over 3 and under 3 all the way across. And I won't show you that entire process, but it's the same all the way across. And when we get back over here again, we're going to go under 2 and under 3. And then the next time around, we're going to go under 3 over 3. And then after doing all 6 of those, then we're going to start over by going under 1 again. So I'll go ahead and weave this and we'll pick up when I get back over here. Okay, now that I've gone about 4 strands this way, I'm going to alternate. I'm going to go under these set of strands and over these. And this is going to help to tighten things up once I slide it over. Okay, I have it all the way woven in, and you can see it's not very tight up there. So I'm going to use a wooden wedge, and I'm just going to slide it up as far as I can. And I'm going to try and push the previous ones. Sometimes they'll go underneath each other. That's good. You want that. You need these pushed up as much as you possibly can so that when you get to the end, you don't run out of space. And you can see right here these tails sticking up. As I mentioned earlier, that's what you want. You want these on this side where you can deal with them. If they're underneath and you're pushing this up and it's catching under there, it really causes you some nightmares. The next strand is going to go over 2. This previous one went over 1. So this one's going to go over 2 and under 3 and over 3 and under 3 all the way across, just like all the rest of them. Now we're going to do the 6th and final in the series. The last one went over 2, so this one's going to go over 3 and under 3, over 3, under 3, all the way across. Okay, now we've completed a full set of 6 weaving strands. We're going to start the pattern over again, which means we're going to go back and do just like the first one, which went under 1 and over 3. So this one's going to go under 1 and over 3, all the way across the under and over 3. And what I want to show you at this point is that we can remove the clamps, because this is starting to get caught in. You can see right here that it's holding this strand and the clamp is no longer needed. And the same is true on the bottom of this one. It's starting to be caught in, and we can remove the clamp. And if you take the clamp off too early, you can always still manipulate these and push them in and tighten them in. I'm going to go ahead and finish weaving the rest of the seat, and when we get to the front, to filling in the corners, we'll show you how that is done. But as far as weaving the rest of the seat, what you want to remember is follow that same 6-step pattern. Under 1, under 2, under 3, over 1, over 2, over 3, repeat. Under 1, and you want to make sure you keep missing it, especially if you come back a day or two in between doing it. Okay, we have progressed along a little bit. I've gotten some more strands woven in, and you can see my herringbone pattern is taking shape very nicely. I wanted to point out that as you're weaving, you're going to look back sometimes and see where you went over 4 or over 2 or under 4, and your whole pattern will be off. The bad news is that you need to pull out all the strands and go back to where you made your mistake and fix it. I do not have any mistakes in this one at this point, but that doesn't mean I will have some later. The time to fix it is when you see it. It's frustrating, but you want your pattern to be uniform and a nice looking chair when you're done. I've been weaving the seat with the basket weave pattern. I don't really concern myself with uniformity. I just go over and under 4 to 5 times, and then I go the other direction. You can see where I've added new pieces, and they're overlapped in there, and they're very, very tight. There's no way those are going to come out. When we get to the end, we'll clip off these tails, but I'm not worried about them for now. You'll see that we're starting to come up to some of the staples. Some of them will be entirely covered with the strands going across. That's fine. Those staples will stay in there the rest of their life. Some of the staples will not be hidden, and we'll come back later and we can remove them, or you can leave them in too. It's personal preference. I wanted to show you here where some of the strands are bunching and covering each other. That's on purpose. I'm pushing them together as tightly as I can using my wooden wedge. It's a very valuable tool, saves on your fingers. And I'm just forcing them up there and making them overlap so that if you don't do that, the strands are going to tend to come down this way, and it's going to make you a problem at the end, as I've mentioned before. I just wanted to show how that's taking shape. And here on the edge, you can see this is my loose strand, and it's starting to get tightened up real nicely. It's overlapped. I've changed my pattern here and there to catch it so it would stay put, keep it tight. That's the main goal, is you want to have that strand be caught up and be tight. Okay, we're weaving along, and as I mentioned earlier, I do my weaving in the middle, way away from here, because it's too tight. So I'm weaving here, and what I do is I hold it with my left hand, and I use my right hand to push the strands up and down as needed to get the weaving process in. And then I can easily pull it through. And then now it has to be pushed up, and that's where I use the tool. And I kind of guide it with my left thumb, push it with this one all the way across, and then I come back. And you can hear by it squeaking that it's really tight. And you want it pushed up as tight as can be. And sometimes you can even reach back and push the previous row a little bit. And then you have that one in place. So the weaving was done out here where it's easy, and then you push it up and get your pattern going. Where it gets tight is when you get near the final edge, and we'll show you that when we get there. Now I'm going to show you on the bottom that it's becoming a little bit tight and hard to do my other pattern, because I'm going to switch here after going 4 strands. I'm going to use a knife. This is just a regular kitchen knife, and it's a handy tool. Most of you have one available, but I'll press this set of strands down, and you can see how I can easily catch that. Now I use it to press this one down and push, and you can see how the knife becomes a handy tool to help me weave across. And I'll probably be doing this more and more as we get near the end, as it gets harder to weave. And like I said, on the front, on the top, it's going to be critical. And I'll show you how I pull this one in. And this will actually be good because you can see it's going to incorporate this tail sticking up. I don't want to be under that tail. I want to be over it. So it's just a little extra step to look for. But as I mentioned earlier, it's a lot easier to deal with these tails on top here. I'm calling the bottom the top, rather than underneath where you can't see them. And again, I'm using my tool. In this case, I'm using a wooden wedge. You may use something else. You may find something that works for you. And that's ready to go. And I do want to say at this point that we're doing basket weave on the bottom. We're not worried about any mistakes or problems because the main goal is to just get something in there to hold it. If you're weaving a rocking chair back, you're going to have to weave herringbone on both sides. So you're still going to have to go with the staple method, and they're going to be on the back of your chair. And you're going to have to be very careful when you overlap, because that's all going to be seen. So just remember, if you're doing the back of a chair, you're going to be doing the herringbone on the front and the back, and both sides have to look good. So that's going to take more time, and hopefully you would charge your customer more for doing that. Alright, I've continued weaving. You can see I'm getting near the front now. As you get closer to the front rail, you're going to discover it's harder and harder to weave the strands in because you don't have a lot of space left. So I'm going to show you how I use a knife to do that. I'm wetting it almost every time I weave now. I'm going to continue my pattern. I use the knife to just make an opening. And slide it in. And I'm just going to go all the way across and let you watch me using the knife. I'm pushing it with my left hand. that only works so far because it gets very hard to push. So I'll pull some through and then just bend it back and continue with a shorter piece. Without a knife or a tool like this, I'm not sure how you would even do this step. Then when I get to the other side, I just pull it through. You can hear by the sound it makes that it's very tight. And it's going to get tighter and tighter as we get close to the front. Unfortunately, these chairs get harder and harder as you get near the end. And I'll show you what the bottom looks like at this point. I think you can see here why the basket weave is a lot faster to do on the bottom. Some people like to do a herringbone on the bottom as well as the top. Personally, I don't see a reason for it, and this is a lot faster. Okay, I'm going to continue weaving all the way to the front, and then I'm going to weave this corner in, and when we come back I will show you on this corner how we're going to put the fill-in pieces in. Alright, we finished weaving all the way to the front, and this side I filled in like I mentioned I was going to. This strand right here is the one that we had when we first wrapped the seat, that we had clamped and it was left over. You can see how it just got picked up and tied in. And then the rest of these I added one at a time until we got to the edge. And each one goes back a little bit less of a distance. You can see that. And I'm going to show you on this side how we did that. It's a little trickier to pick up your pattern because you're weaving this way now instead of side to side. But you just want to look at what you've got here. And this one went under 1, this one went under 2, so the one we're going to add would have to go under 3. And you're going to need your knife. And from that point you're just going to go over 3 and under 3. You want to keep it moist so it slides well. Takes a little practice with a knife to learn how to manipulate it and how to catch it. Now when you're deciding how far back you want to go as far as you can, but you want to end up with your last piece going underneath, not laying on top. As you can see, it can get very difficult. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go over 3 more, and then I'm going to go underneath, and it's just going to end there. So what I'm going to do is, well, what I'll probably do is I'll pull some back so it doesn't stick out too far. So this will be my last three that I'm going to go over. pull it back a little bit to make sure everything is tight, and that just stays underneath there. And then I'm just going to push it over. I see a mistake right there. I mentioned that earlier. That one went over 4. So that's not correct. So that means you got to take it out. It's probably good for you to see this. I didn't plan to make a mistake, but I did. It would probably explain why it was so hard to get that last piece in. There. Just going to push it over so it's up snug against there. And you can tell by how tight it is that that piece is never going to come out. That's going to stay there. Now I'll flip it over and we'll show you how to do the bottom. First thing I'm going to do is pull this back and cut it off near the back leg. I don't need to be weaving all that extra piece. You may need your knife under here, but it should go fairly easy. Another reason to use the basket weave on the bottom. I have that piece in. I'm going to trim it off a little bit more so it's short of the leg, and then I'll just tuck it underneath there. And then we have that one in. Now the next one that I come under and do, I will be reversing. I'll be going over these and under those because that's enough in this direction. So the first one will be kind of hard, but then the rest of them will follow that pattern and it'll be easy. So I'll go ahead and do that, and that'll finish the chair, and then I'll come back and show you about finishing up the final touches. Okay, we finished the entire chair. I filled in the front here. You can see each strand ends a little bit shorter than the previous one. What I did is I just wove it back as far as I could. The rail is this thick underneath there, and it's hard to weave on top of the rail. So you just take it as far as you can and then just tuck the tail under an inch, a few inches, whatever you can get in there, and then it's finished. Now to finish up the chair totally, I like to take a pair of nippers and look for any loose hairs and just any pieces where there's little snags or something hanging up. You can usually feel it with your hand, and I like to trim those off. And then on the bottom, there's a couple things we can do. One is we have these little tails sticking up, and it's very tight in there, and they're not needed, so I'm going to cut those off. Just bend them up, get your nippers under there, and snip them off. You may have a lot or you may have a few, depends on your weaving method. Some people like to tuck them underneath while they're weaving and not have any left. And if there's any hairs on the bottom, I just kind of trim it up a little bit. You don't want something to end up hanging down later on. And then we have some staples that are visible. Some of the staples got covered over and some of them are visible. You can leave them in if you want to, or if you think it's best, you can take them out. What I do is I take a pair of needle nose pliers and just kind of push down on it a little bit and squeeze and pull it up, and they come right out. So you can go along to any staples that are not wanted and pull them out, and your strands are not going to go anywhere. That's woven so tightly that it's going to hold. And there we have the completed chair. And one thing I did want to mention is that the coloration of the strands changes. You can see you've got some here that are darker, a couple going across this way. That's part of the beauty of wide binding cane, is the variation in color. I've had customers deliver a chair we spent hours on, and what they'll say is, "Ooh, I don't like that brown strand." So if you think you're going to have a picky customer, you may want to hand pick each strand before you weave it so you don't put one in. Personally, we like that. And actually, if you look at the seat that came out of here, there's many strands that were darker. You can see. And you may even want to point that out to your customer. If they don't like it, tell them, well, they lived with it for years before. And there's the bottom of the original seat. There's our new seat, and it's completed.